everybody come with their own bag of tricks. This is a plan where everybody can kind of at least have the same frame of reference when they're thinking about de-escalation and how to understand the crisis. De-escalation and understanding crisis are the two primary things this training is intended to do, and that's what we're going to focus on. I think that it'll probably be best if you guys just interrupt with any questions, comments, or concerns, so you make sure you get out what you need, and either I know it or I don't know it, and but you at least take a chance to wrestle with, or maybe somebody else have an answer to the question. So I think these kind of trainings go better, you know, that just here for me the whole time. You can kind of jump in and feed the information. So before I get started, anybody got any questions about anything in particular?
You got something for like coworkers and you just try.
Co-workers? Okay, I got something for you. Co-workers, let me write that down. Co-workers. It's supposed to be the basic. It sounds like the advanced group.
Also, as you discussed, also that you know who we are and
The middleman do.
yeah. So maybe what you do here, just to create a little intimacy.
Yeah.
The trainer and the participants.
I'll start with the press, and I can share from Minneapolis and with the site.
And look at Brooklyn, some of this
With the sites.
Okay. Okay.
Jennifer is doing an intro as a motivator. I'm a therapist and supervise the interns. I'm Sarah. I'm a youth counselor.
Youth counselor where?
From practice.
Okay.
I'm Shay. I'm the education and career specialist at Brooklyn.
I'm Sheila, and I'm executive case management at Minneapolis. Brittany, I don't know.
No, it's that one. They got all the school this one.
I'm case manager. I work now.
Okay, case management. All right. Thank you for reminding me of the introductions. Most of the time, it's just such a large group. Gotta just jump into it. Feet first. All right. So this is a standard training, and the way it can become customized to meet your needs is, like I said, just to jump in, there's be some parts that might not be relevant. For example, the whole physical part we're going to get into. We're really going to focus and wrestle with how to see and interpret like behavior before it turns into an issue. And even after it turns to an issue, then what? Okay, so this is what they call the CPI crisis development model. And before we get into any of the details about it, when I think about this, I think of it in two ways. In one way, people who don't have a plan and fail. You guys ever heard that old saying? The personnel got a plan, they plan and fail. So it's always important to at least have some kind of a plan or a strategy or approach, you know, when you're in terms of thinking about behavior or just giving good care to students in general or kids in general. On the other end, you know, Mike Tyson had this quote, everybody got a plan until I punch him in the face. So I don't know about you, but we see that a lot. You come in with a plan, and it's a really good plan, and then you get punched in the face. And then you got to go back to the drawing board. I like to say that because it don't really matter if you got the perfect plan, because if you think about it, any kind of team, both teams have a plan anytime they're playing each other. And the plan looks really good on paper. Somebody loses every time. So that means that they're playing, you know, in that sense, going back to Mike Tyson quote, they got punched in the face on that one. And I like to think, I say that because a lot of people say, well, I don't know if this plan works. Well, A, it is a plan. And it will work a lot of the time, but it's gonna then boil back down to you guys as individual strengths and what you bring to the table, just the continuity of just how you guys team together in order to make it work. But this right here is very fundamental and it's sequential. And after we go through the sequence, we'll talk about what happens when it's not in the sequence. Yeah. But just to start to understand what it looks like, we'll start in the sequence. So the first thing they like to talk about when they think about de-escalation is really asking yourself, what do it look like when it first starts? And when you're thinking about what we're going to go over today, think about a significant other, a friend, or kid. Everybody got these signs that they're going to start to clown a little bit. And you can tell either by what they say or how they move. There's always some clue. In this training, they call that anxiety or just kind of showing up anxious. I had a coworker who used to say, because we knew this certain student when they come with their hair messed up, then it's gonna be a long day. I remember this guy used to always say, joke to me, he said, "Hey, I don't come in here acting like your hair." Because we said they just woke up, they're doing this, they hadn't really brushed their teeth, their hair is and we know it's gonna be a long one. And then, so that's just physical appearance to kind of give us a clue, like, okay, this might be one of those days. And you know, we say that because we got a chance to know these students and we start to pick up on some signs, you know, when it might be a tough day or something. For this example, they name anxiety and they call it a noticeable increase or change in behavior. And they talk about like pacing or finger drumming or just messing with their hands like this. What I want to hear from you guys on, like, what are some other examples of how or what it might look like if a person is anxious? What is it? Pacing. Pacing is always like a telltale sign for most people.
Their level of the voice begins to change. So
Yep.
from deep to high pitch.
Deep to high pitched voice.
Or high pitch to deep.
Yeah. So if it's high most of the time, then it might go low. If it's low most of the time, then it might go high. Shaking a little bit, fidgeting. Anything else that might be a sign of anxiety in terms of like someone is beginning, like there's something going on? Breathing. Sweating.
I know sometimes people start to mumble to themselves, so it's like, you know, like I try to catch them at that stage because they're kind of like upset, but they're saying things to themselves, right?
Mm-hmm. So you notice when they start talking to themselves, they start to kind of get themselves amped up a little bit. So if you notice in the example, most of it is something that you can see in their behavior, like something that they're doing. The example I gave is just their physical appearance. I think that that's one of those are two of the primary ways you can kind of see anxiety when it's presented to you, because who knows what a person's been through before we see them. They show up and then they either show up and look like they had a tough day or a tough night, or they start like behaving in a different way. So for this definition, they just call it, generally speaking, a noticeable change in behavior, but it can also be in appearance. Anybody got any questions or reactions to that? So the staff approach to that is being supportive. Now they use big words right here, such as empathetic, non-judgmental approach, attempting to alleviate anxiety. What they really mean is just being there for them and just kind of doing a check-in, being supportive to look a variety of ways. What are some ways that you guys been supportive when you notice somebody just on that anxious level, and your gut tells you like, okay, looks like this person might be going through something.
Let them vent.
Let them vent. They might need to talk about it.
I'm listening more.
Just more, just less words, more of the ears.
And I think like being there, just being present with them in their space.
Being present. Like that's one of the most underrated ones. Because sometimes you don't got to do anything at all. You can just be around. I remember being comforted, and no one gave me a hug necessarily. It was just like there. You know, if I needed to say something, and if I didn't, they didn't press me to do it.
I know that you got empathetic, just because you don't necessarily want to lie to them about anything, you know, like you don't want to necessarily have any type of sympathy for them. So I would never necessarily you would always try to empower someone or another, you know, without necessarily just claiming whatever it is going on. And never feel bad. You're trying to empower when possible. So if there's something wrong with you, yeah, let's claim it, that something's wrong with it. What do you do about it? So, not from an efficient perspective, only from a positive perspective.
So something is going wrong, and to them, that something is big. I mean, I was talking to my kid just the other day, and his big thing was not getting his allowance on time. He felt like he should, and, you know, he went on and on and on. Hey, he did a whole lot of things to get this allowance. But for him, when I was a kid, I remember thinking, if I didn't know I was losing it and I didn't see that coming, like I had all these plans, I was gonna do this, I was gonna do that. And in terms of being like a seventh grader, I was like, this is messed up. And because I gave him a consequence, I don't necessarily need to go and then just stick it to him. Say, hey, here's what happened, here's the decision I made. I know it's tough. It's tough when I lose money, and you know you'll be okay. So on one hand, I am the person giving the consequence, and on the other hand, I can still got a little room to be empathetic about it.
Yeah.
Because it's one thing to follow up and be consistent. It's another thing to just really nail them to the ground with some words, because I don't know how much that's helpful when you already actually gave them consequence. So I say supportive just to say that there's always room to be empathetic, and at the same time, if you're trying to stay consistent, you can still do both at the same time. So generally speaking, that's what we're going to do. Someone's anxious, we're going to come in with support. And the next one is defensive. And again, this is kind of going in order. The beginning stage of loss of rationality. At this stage, an individual often becomes belligerent or challenges authority. So think in terms of they know what the expectations are. The rules are as crystal clear as they've ever been. But on this day, they want to pretend that they don't know because they're anxious and they're just starting to amp up. I didn't know what time we're supposed to do this. I ain't doing it today. This ain't fair. You know what? You guys are always on my back. And it's a breakaway from consistency. A consistency that you know, that they know, and that's clearly stated all over the place. But right now, you're like, hey, you know what? This is crazy. And their behavior and their words start to give you a clue, like this person must be having a real bad day, because I'm not introducing anything brand new at all. This is something that we do all the time. When I think about this, I think about there's a time where we was leaving the gym with a group of students, and one of them said, I'm gonna stay back, I ain't going to class. So then I'm thinking, well, here we go. So you got another class. No, I ain't going to class. I don't know why PE short. It should be longer. So to me, when they start to get defensive, and that's an irrational thought, because what I know is we've been going to class the last 6 months. There he goes. Oh, no, not today. This is silly. So that's a clue when they start to get a little defensive about something that's like on schedule or like normal. And the staff approach is to be directive, and they define it as an approach in which a staff member takes control of a potentially escalating situation. If I had to change this from CPI, crisis prevention and intervention, I would say redirective. I think that that's a better word, and I would say as we go through this crisis development model, you can be supportive at all stages. You don't necessarily got to stop being supportive here. You're definitely being supportive, and right here when they say directive, really think in terms of redirect. This is a time where, and we may or may not have time to get into like the how to do it, you're just gonna really shorten your sentences. Time to go, going back to the example I gave, listen, it's time to go to class. You go to class every day at the same time. I really need you to just put the ball away and walk with me to class. We'll talk about a change or maybe some other options later on, but right now, here's what we gotta do. And not to chase the shiny object, because they might say, well, Miss Johnson, she took him and did this, and they start to point to a rule that's been broken or inconsistency over here. The goal when you're being directed or redirected is just to stick to the talking points. And less is more in this situation. Everything they say, we can talk about that later.
Could you just elaborate a little bit? Because I know some people just see the training and see the directive and not understand that the tone is just as important as being directed. So you could let me know having a non-violent tone is just as important as anything else.
Okay. So when I think about this training, it's easy, and I notice that a lot of people nod and saying, yeah, because everybody understands it and been there. However, when people start to get under your skin and start to get you fired up a little bit, it's worth taking a deep breath and saying, you know what? We got to go to class. PE is over with. And that's what we've been doing. I don't know what else to say right now. That's the deal. It takes that deep breath. It takes some mindfulness saying, all right, if I start yelling then, you know, then where are we gonna go with this? And now we're completely off. In a sense, they kind of won. And deep breaths every day. Deep breaths at a red light, deep breaths getting up, somebody in the bathroom, like, why is this person in the bathroom? You know? So this one, directed and redirected, I would stop and take a deep breath on at every area. Sometimes some days we're fresher than most and we're just in the zone. And we don't even need to take a lot of deep breaths. Sometimes we got our own thing that we're trying to, you know, leave at the door, but sometimes this kind of stuff seeps in and our patience ain't as good as it ordinarily is. And it's worth taking a deep breath. And if you notice, when I demonstrated this, I just lowered my voice because it's easy at this time to start to match their voice. So thank you for pointing that out. It's really important just to take a deep breath and pause at all of these points. The next one is acting out in person. And for you guys, you guys will probably have a different intervention, so I won't talk a lot about this. This is when they take it to that next level. Everything they do is over a clear line and other interventions are warranted. So you guys wouldn't have to intervene with them, but if you have, you know, I work at a place where there's elementary kids and middle school kids, and they are there, and we're authorized to like keep them from hurting themselves and other people. And if we don't, we are not necessarily taking care of them like we promised to, or other people like we let them go and attack somebody. So that's what they refer to when they talk about an acting out person. Their response to that is a physical intervention. That's beyond the scope of like this training today, but that's what they're to do, you know, when things are just crazy. Like definitely somebody's gonna get hurt, or definitely they're gonna hurt themselves, and there's no real questions about it. So then, go ahead.
My question to you is, we often have times where you might get to this point. What would be your thoughts or your suggestions about the youth is there, but as you just said, we can't match them. Because we can't physically engage them. What are your thoughts about maybe strategies or ways that staff can know that the youth is there, but maybe walk away at a time or?
Okay.
Yeah.
And can I add to that too? Because I know you're going, so can I just give you an example?
Yeah.
You're sitting down and the youth has already went past the anxiety and the defensive, and they're on between the defensive and acting out of control. But they're standing over you, hovering, and kind of got you cornered in where you can't get out. What you gonna do? What you gonna do? But you're sitting down. By us having this non-physical approach, what would you suggest for us to get out of that particular situation so that we do not go to the next level of
Self-defense,
self-defense.
right.
Well,
Better be a good talker.
A, when I asked you guys to ask me questions, I meant easy questions. Sometimes there are students who go there really easy that we had to deal with. Ordinarily for us in our organization, we had a lot of background information on them. And we had these things we call a child study meeting, in which we kind of came up with a specific game plan for the student. And once we did that, we start to do things like staff appropriately for that person, start to have an understanding that I might say, hey, look, I'm with, what's his name? You know how he did. Can you make sure you're at earshot in case things start to escalate? So I would stop and I would pause and really do like a focus meeting on a particular student that's likely to act out, because if I had to guess, I would say most of the students don't. And there's a handful that do. And that handful that do put you guys in a situation where you don't want to hurt nobody, and you don't want to get in trouble at the same time, and you don't want to get hurt at the same time. A meeting to kind of calibrate and communicate, talk about like when, where, and how can we get some more of those oversight, and a strategy in which they're less likely to put you in a compromising situation. The unfortunate part about planning for that is almost always after the fact, because I guess that you guys don't have a lot of information coming in, and you start to gain information as you go along, and then there's a point where they step over the line, and because everybody's off doing what they ordinarily do, and you don't anticipate somebody going there, now you're stuck in the situation. Every time, just to be transparent, that has happened, we almost had to have a meeting after the fact. We did the best we could with the information we got coming in, but small things we did was position ourselves and away from a corner in a wall. We kind of talked about our gut, like, hey, this kid, he's really been saying these things, and I think that he or she'll go there. And we start to kind of put the word out around like that. And the more information they give us behaviorally, the more we're able to kind of pre-plan about it. But that's about it. Sometimes people just boom, go. They only got one time to do it in our program, then we're having a meeting the very next day to start to shore up, because nobody wants to hurt anybody, nobody wants to get hurt, and nobody wants to invite knowingly a conflict. So in that sense, it really depends on the situation. It depends on how far they jump to the level. And most people aren't prepared when somebody just goes from 0 to 100, like you said, from anxiety all the way to the brink of getting physical. So I think it'll cause for a meeting if you think you see it coming, and it definitely calls for a meeting if a situation occurs, so you can just kind of come up with a better plan next time. Because we go hands-on, our plan is just that in case it were to happen.
So what you're saying is, make sure other people in the room, so the user know you pull it.
Make sure people in the room. I'll put it like this. There's been so many times where a student might say, when they start to act out and I call for support, they're like, oh, you're a grown man, I'm a middle school. You calling for support on me? You can't handle me yourself. Why don't you come do it yourself? Why don't you escort me out? And they're on and on. Like, that's all right, it's gonna be me and you one day by ourselves. And it's gold you to have a verbal interaction with them. But what I do know is I got this mortgage to pay, I got this student loan. I'm gonna win anyway. So what about winning? So I'll call whoever, call a couple people. So if anything happened, you got witnesses, it won't be like, yeah, Mr. Hayes just flipped out and punched me in the face. That's what happened. And then it's my word against his. So I really like to put myself in a situation where I got somebody to cooperate on a story. And really, the more people you get, the more everybody can stay calm. Because what we know is they might be able to do something silly or out of ordinary with one person, but not three.
Right.
I've often heard kids say, you know what? I'm slapping you, I'm knocking you out, I'm DBTing you, and I don't want to get them more escalated, both laughing. I'm like, what do you think we're gonna be in line? You're upset right now, I'm gonna give you some time. You know, like, oh, what? Right.
So, besides the chase that I heard, you're saying that when we have a youth that comes in, whether we have information or not, or we know information or not, if we see signs of some of these things, that's what we'll initiate a plan of saying this youth looks like it potentially could go to this point. What's our plan around not putting, when they're in the house, not putting ourselves in a position where we might get cornered or where we might have to go here. So being more intentional ahead of time. That's what I hear you saying.
That and another practical thing you could do is that, let's say staff, one or more staff think like this person might be at risk of doing this. You can then start to kind of someone can do a check-in with that person, just kind of check their background. Describe it, tell me how you ordinarily handle conflict when you think that somebody did you wrong and things got physical. And just to see if they're gonna say, you know, one time the staff, they was yelling and I started yelling, they got close, so I punched them in the face. So that's like a clue. So maybe a check-in. When they start to jump with their triggers. So everybody's aware and are kind of monitoring like people who they think, you know, you don't need a lot of information. If you just say, man, this person getting kind of fired up when I say do X, Y, or Z, that's something to consider. And then another person might do a check-in to ask some questions to kind of get a sense of their potentiality, like how likely they are to do that. And that's the best intervention I can think of as far as like catching this before it gets out of hand.
So kind of sort of a scenario and I guess question for managers and you. So say someone is here alone, and like one of the youth is like, you know, like almost and trying to fight. What would we do? I understand like trying to not be in a corner. Would we then like call a manager? Would we call the police since we're here alone and we can't call for help? Would we try to stay in heavily cambered areas? Like, what would be our way of with 911? Okay.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. I like all the areas.
Yeah.
Every last one of them, I do everything you just said. Because just practically speaking, if I told you anything other than what you just said, then I just be making up something. Because it's such a unique situation. I imagine that kind of situation ain't the norm. It ain't always like I'm alone with a person. There's violence towards people, right?
Well, I mean, I don't know how it is in Minneapolis, but here, like, we are often so.
With violent people.
No, it's violent.
But maybe some who have the potential to be violent.
Yeah, I mean, the other piece though, I hear you saying, sir, is there's a piece to this fear around all right, potential, right, because there's trauma can come in with the potential escalate. And then there's another piece of saying this youth has behaviors that indicate they will escalate, right? I think those, for me, are like two different things. I think all of our youth have potential. We have potential. We're talking about being a good kid, you know, human beings, you know, we have potential, but I don't think that 100% of our youth will go to a 10. I think that there's, you know, 25% that have a past history of physical violence. And I think I hear you saying really knowing those by asking the questions so you have a good understanding. And
having some kind of screening in place. When I say screening, I really mean like the gut feeling among staff, check-in and like the results of that check-in and creative scheduling to minimize, and then for the individual staff, mindfulness about where they are in proximity to the student. And even if they give us any clue like they're starting to escalate, err on the side of go ahead and getting help in earlier than later. So for example, if my gut telling me with no real tangible evidence like something might be getting out of hand and could get physical, that's when I can at least let somebody know.
It brings up an interesting conversation that we probably should have also too. I know we do a lot of screening anyway, right? When we're doing, intakes and stuff like that, but that is a question, kind of how you explain. And I don't know, this probably all have to come down to us having a conversation of asking those questions upon intake. How do you handle conflict? What do you, and then that way we can say, okay, from now on, we have to put these things in place because of what was said in the intake. And so I believe that is always a good best practice is to ask the questions that even if we don't have a gut, I think that should be something that we should put down anyway.
Are we not, do we not do that in intake? I have no idea.
We do ask.
Now,
Okay.
do we do them the day of intake? No. Because it depends on the time frame and on the way our procedure checklist is manned out, that you need to at least do it within a few days. So it's very important to do that. You can, just based on my experience, all the intakes that I have done, I work hard at trying to get a feel for the people that I do intakes. And usually if you are that type of person, just my background in the criminal justice and correction system, you can figure out a whole lot just to have an hour and a half conversation with somebody. Whether they show it all to you or just a little bit. So you know which people you can kind of give 24 hours, maybe 48 hours because they got business to do the IAPP, which is the individual abuse prevention plan. Long story short, we do that. And there are questions in there, have you ever done anything to yourself? Have you ever done anything to others?
And think about this in terms, it's not as a problem to be solved, but a dilemma that you're going to constantly wrestle with, because as service providers and as people that's welcoming and just trying to be helpful, there's always going to be someone who comes in, tell you what you want to hear, because there's no stress in a one-on-one situation. They're calm, cool, and collected. Whatever they perceive their stresses are, that's the very first time you see it. And you can't really safeguard against that never happening, because then you'll start to discriminate against people and not do the service you provide.
So I'm really feel to go against this, but once you identify a young person that you feel that your gut's kind of telling you, I know you don't encourage the team to kind of stay away. That's the time to try to really develop a rapport relationship with that other person. So if it does hit the fan, you have some groundwork instead of, I heard, I got this feeling, so I'm gonna stay away. But then when it hits the fan, you have no connection or relationship to even try to do the escalation, period. You have no foundation.
Yeah, excellent point. Building relationships is key. That gives you the opportunity to say, listen, things are getting a little out of hand here, and I feel like we can stop right now and just take a pause, because it feels like you're on the brink of making a not good decision. However you want to phrase it, because you guys got your own bag of tricks you use, and say, we're cool, I'm just here to help, and we don't need to go there. And that's building deep, kind of remind them of the friendship, and try to use that as a leverage point, because you're more likely to be successful with somebody who you can kind of draw them into that than someone who don't know you. So therefore, they don't necessarily have a vested interest not to completely blow up. And I believe in humanity to everybody. So the more you build a relationship, the more you can kind of draw on that in order to de-escalate a person. Excellent point. Anybody else got anything to add? But yeah, that's how by and large, we come up with a plan afterwards, but we scour and we ask questions and we give feedback to each other on students with potential to do that. Afterwards is thing they call tension reduction. Once they act it out and they calm down, our job is to kind of reconnect again with them. The one previous to this a situation occurred and then they blew up and let's say for the scope of this train, they got on the brink of doing something that could get them arrested or some charges, definitely kicked out of here. But then we're at the point where it's tension reduction. And this is a situation where they calm completely down and now they're concerned about, can I still stay here? Are you mad at me? It's just like the third or the second strike. It's strike one time, 2, 3, 4, what's going on here? They're ready to negotiate. They seen the light, they're never doing it again. And you've seen this story over and over again. For everybody has somebody in their life that continuously did something wrong, and you hear the same apology, and you can almost say it before they get done. You know, I lost my head. Just want to say, you're smart. You always help me, and I really, you know, being at home and that's the crisis development part on their end. On our end is to, I would say, because you guys are all experienced, choose our words carefully, because this ain't the point. They want to know what the consequence is, but this ain't the point where you even have to have that conversation. What I ordinarily say is, what happens is a team decision. I'm not the boss of anybody. I don't tell nobody what to do. I need to go back to the team, let them know what happened, and then whatever the team decides, I mean, that's it. It's real easy when I work with a group like this. College students, they just got their degree or whatever, they brand new. They're like, what are you talking about? Somebody might get violent towards me. Even if I'm trying to help them. Here we go. But I assume you guys did this, you know. You guys can feel your way through whether it's a time to really debrief. I see giving therapeutic report and debriefing different. I think that debriefing might come after you guys had a chance to bring it back to the team and talk about it, and then talk to that person. If they're the ones that act out, a natural or logical consequence is just let them wait. If they're worried about it, so what? That's what happens when you blow up. And it ain't a bad consequence. You just gotta wait and figure out what happened. But right now, you can just say, look, I'm just ready to move on with the rest of the day. Sometimes you gotta take it till you make it. I ain't upset about this whole thing. I let it go. And today is a new day, and let's just move on with our day. And then try and walk away from it like that. And let them know that it's a team decision that you got to consult with the team as far as what's going to happen. And you could just leave it there. Anybody got any reactions or comments about this?
What I like about that approach also is that it allows the space for the youth to come down, and also allows us as staff, who are in a heightened situation, and we're having to remain cool, calm, collected, and consistent. For us to also process to make sure that we're not just making rash decisions, because we can never, ever make decisions based on our emotions. Mm-hmm. So I love that as sort of the balance of that, sort of for accountability for all, core events prevention.
And it's
not punitive either. It's kind of like, you do this to me, so now I'm doing this to you.
Which is interesting that you bring that up, because human nature is just to kind of lean that way. At the end of the day, we're all human beings. We get upset. Everybody at some point says something they wish they didn't say. It reminds me of this African proverb: a word uttered can never be taken away. And this is a good opportunity, like you said, to take it, when you lose, to take that deep breath. And to me, if all else fails, I do what I call the right to remain silent. Just don't say anything. If I'm there and they want to go through their tension reduction, but this is the 9th time in this window of 3 days, I might say, hey, just give me a minute. I need to process this. And so therefore, you don't gotta have a conversation because of what they just did. And you can just give yourself an opportunity to take a minute before you jump back in the game. So at the base, you can do that. At your best, you can, and you got the presence of mind, you can say, let me just take this back to the team and process it. And try not to make any promises.
I also think practicing this way helps from repeating, going back to stuff again.
Yeah.
My thought is, that when a person's at this place, they want a quick answer because they're still that environment, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
you start the whole process again because no matter what you say, we're back to arguing again, right? And we're back to this,
Yep.
then we're back to and then we're back here.
There you go.
I think it's a way to really, it's also like a teaching kind of application of saying that in life, like real processes take time. You know, silence is okay, but not to talk is okay. You learn a different type of comfort and a different way of doing things, but repeating the same cycle.
Yep.
Over and over. So I think that's one of the reasons why we do it, but also, like because we meetings and we, yeah, even as adults, even though we know it's not about us, like you said, we still get triggered, right?
Yeah.
Excellent point. Because if this therapeutic report done wrong, loops you right back to the beginning again. And that's why it's important.
This kind of leads me to the question and inspect part of the practice of asking kids to leave for the night for 24 hours. Because on one hand, I can see how that would give everyone 24 hours to cool down and figure out what's going on. On another hand, like that's on like one or two staff to make that decision like right now and give you the leave for 24 hours. That could also very much be based on emotion of I don't want to deal with you right now. So kind of, I don't know if I have a question. I just
Well, every organization got a mission, vision, philosophy, kind of like a way of doing things. So anytime I feel like I'm making a decision that's maybe outside my pay grade a bit, I start to ask the question, what would the upper leader like philosophically? What are some agreements, some common agreements among team members that I can kind of draw direction from when I'm making a decision? And just ask myself, am I over it? You know, are we saying, yeah, we're gonna suck it to them? I mean, you can kind of tell your body language when you're cooperating to do something that's wrong. You're like, yeah, you know what, that's it. This is it. You know? Here's what we're gonna do. Otherwise, that's on one hand. On the other hand, is people supporting each other, saying, oh man, to spend a little time to admire the problem. Like, okay. Yeah, I understand why they're in a situation right now, but I don't want to contribute to that situation. Let's take a deep breath and then try to guide it towards having some kind of positive solution that's objective and transparent, because you're here trying to do good work and you're in a position of power and you can use that position of power either way. And it takes a lot of presence of mind to really wrestle with your own ethical decision making, because you can cooperate and go in the wrong direction, or you can kind of lean on what you know that collectively most people would like to see happen, and just take a deep breath and just kind of get over it and then do it. And I say get over it because that's how I feel sometimes.
And so my question is for everybody. I mean, if being held accountable, like from a position that, say for instance, I get a call the next day or come in next day that they let a youth leave and it's 20 below zero, just let them go, and and I don't know the whole situation. I'm just throwing it out there. Do you think that holding each other accountable when we're in an escalated situation emotionally because this person tried this over and over again, and we're just like, they gotta go. I don't care what the manager say or whatever, this is my response to it. This has been going on. Do you think from a person to hold that other person accountable, can we ask those questions such as, and this is open for everyone to say, did you think it through? Did you take a deep breath? Where were you at emotionally when you made this decision to keep some, to let this person go? Whether we feel like it's wrong or not, that person, maybe it might be the best decision, but just to hold everybody accountable. I don't know if anybody will feel offensive or if that's an offensive conversation, but I think it's real, to say, hey, Bryce, when you made that decision, where were you at? Are you okay? I know that was a lot. Did you go through these processes? And I kind of want to put that out there. I mean, I know we've done it, where it was like, why did you get the mat slammed on his head? you know. What happens? It's me and you. Ain't nobody watching us. Just want to see you okay because we do that. But in this, it brings up an interesting dynamic that I think we could do that, you know, and be able to hold each other accountable. Not just like I'm trying to rule you, or we all can be on the same level. Me and Zach can have a conversation and say, man, what were you at when you made that decision? And not feel offensive. I mean, I guess that's all.
Or a check-in.
Yeah, with each other and just kind of, yeah.
I personally think a check-in is good, but I want to kind of bring it back to the beginning of your question. Did you say that this is something that happens all the time?
No, I'm just saying.
Oh,
is this
no, I
something?
mean, just the scenario. Was it, I don't know if I heard you say that, you know, there was an incident that occurred, was ongoing, and.
No, I'm just using her scenario.
Oh,
Yeah, no, just a scenario. If it does come up, do you think that would be a good thing to do a check-in when we make decisions that I kind of not probably kick someone out? I don't know. I know we're supposed to do it. Yeah.
I really like it, and I like it because the other piece of that, to me, when someone says I'm going to check in with you, our defensiveness also tells where we were in that scenario.
Mm-hmm.
I think a couple of years ago, and those who were here, you can tell me, we had a lot of talks about triggers, like what were our own personal triggers, and how we start to have these conversations where it felt natural. To say, hey, I noticed every time the truth comes around, you walk away. Like, you know, the same way we read young people's body language, we have our own too, all people. And I think we talked about this idea around unconditional positive regard, where you might not like the person, but you have to work with them. So how do you really do this work when you already know something about them? Like, this person irritates, excuse me, the shit, right? Like, I'm not feeling. But your question brings up the times when, at least in our organization, it feels like it can feel like very hard to have a dialogue around you made this decision. I'm not questioning it, but as another person doing this work, it felt a little power over the power base. And I think the other thing I want to comment on is, I think to what you said, sir, is a good point, because we've always had these very clear black and white. Here's the times when you do put someone out, meaning where the place is unsafe, where I feel unsafe. But there are times there has been that happening. I don't know if the safety was a thing. It was more of the conflict with who's on staff.
I was just gonna say, it seems to me, we've had some conversations similar to this in case council. And it seems to me that if we're gonna talk about being a team, then what you're suggesting is part of the team. It doesn't need to be explained, or, you know, we don't need to massage the language about it. This is what we do when we're on a team. We check in with each other, we back each other up, and hopefully that means when things are good and when things are not good. And so there is that freedom for me to say, you know, I want to check in with you because this is what I noticed. Let me help you out instead of checking in with you because you're in trouble. You know, and I think it's important if we really are a team that we're backing each other up that way.
I think the ingredients of a healthy team, there is a difference between checking in and checking out. But I think a healthy team can do both.
Yeah.
And it's all for all of us. And that's no, doesn't matter the position that anybody's in, because we're all a part of that team.
This is my issue, because we're supposed to keep the house safe, right? Maybe I'm just keeping the house safe. Maybe I'm soft, okay? I'm soft, you know, I play hard, because I will start off a conversation like, okay, let me do this. Okay, that's the this. Okay, this is what we did. Okay, we get it right out. But the moment the youth gets crying, I'm like, never mind. You say, you know, because I don't want the youth to feel like, you know what I'm saying? But I, you know, like, but then I'm always in the back of my head, like, am I setting a standard where they know I'm the soft one, or that they can act a fool that my correction is not for real? You know what I'm saying? Like, what's the boundary for that? Like, because it is about me, like, you know, you haven't put the application in, and since you've been here, it's been 97 months.
When you start crying, I say, no, Shay, what'd you say? You get a night out. So
Well, I will
I'm
say
with
this,
you, but I can escalate.
in terms of teaming, you know, you guys stumbled upon this conversation about being transparent and keeping it real. I gotta say, all the time I ever spent on a team, the biggest and the most difficult thing has always been, without a question, is to keep it real. Remember, we had this value in the team called keeping it real? And there'll be some times where I'll come to a staff meeting with the nurture heart approach, you guys are like, this ain't working. And then we'll just have like a philosophical disagreement, and we'll wrestle with it and we'll play, but it ain't about whether it worked or didn't. It's like that opportunity for people to share and open up. It's the most difficult thing to do, and it always is. For that reason, I most like want a plaque on my wall or somewhere where I can see it almost on a daily basis. I feel like sometimes I think hard, but then when it comes down to it, I don't want to hurt nobody's feelings. But that has gotten me in so much trouble, and sometimes it just dug me a hole. And these days, I'm just like, oh, I'm just gonna keep it real, cause I got my hand bit for not doing it.
Very important.
Continuously having that courageous conversation and creating an atmosphere of trust where a person could say that. There was a time where Billy Ross, there was a student who was picking on another student about being overweight, and then this guy comes in and he goes, "What, are you little? So you're little. So you're a little person. No, you're not. No, you're not. You eat a lot of sandwiches just like him." And then he gets up and leaves, and then this girl blows up, tells her mom. Her mom's called me, and and I go and tell him, because it's his first time, like, dude, you gotta stop saying this to students. Like, man, somebody had to tell her. I went and tell another colleague, I'm like, look, you need to talk to your friend, because I can't keep putting out these fires for him. He gotta be able to just hold it, because he says if he leaves, he goes on lunch. Now I'm getting chewed. I don't even know if I didn't did anything at all. And so over a period of time, I learned that go ahead and telling them early on is the most important thing, and here's why. Because if you don't, then you become a part of the problem, and that's something you can't really say is their problem anymore. It's yours, because you got a complete thought in your head and some feedback, and the reason the feedback hadn't been given is because you haven't took that step to make it happen. So for that reason, philosophically speaking, I think everybody should always strive to create an environment where a conversation like that can happen. Know that it might not go well. Initially, when it lands, it ain't good feedback. You say, well, I think they're true. And then after you think about it, even if you say you don't believe it, and then you go in the next day and you're in a similar situation, it helps you to kind of think about it at least. So I think that keeping it real, being transparent, and being open for feedback is the hardest thing a team can do, especially living in Minnesota, where Minnesota nice prevails, and it's just straight pervasive, where people don't really come to you that direct. I think it's something to put on everybody's frontal lobe and just agree to wrestle with, and just say, when you was yelling at the kids and you said get out, you're gonna kick them out. I was just thinking that maybe you should just kind of stick to our policies and procedures and just kind of let it stay there instead of just, that's why you got here in the first place. Just kind of extra, and then just say we're cool. But I just want to say that.
Okay, I want to answer that. Because I agree that we have here, and I'm going with our team, because we have developed a close relationship with one another. But we have multiple personalities, okay? And that's how we evolve. And we have some people who are like, boom. You know, like we have special effects, right? With the way they talk. Then you got some people who are like, you know, but because of the personality types, my thing is always, and you said this, but I would love to elaborate some more. Words can either be heard by the way you say them or shut down what's going to be said, right? So I think there's a way to keep it real and be really nice and transparent, but not really. Okay.
Gotta have balance.
Yes, so I say that because in this youth work, what I've really learned is that there are those people who've been there for a long time and they're overly direct, which is a beautiful thing. but it shuts it down, right? Because they are now offended the person that
Yeah, nobody likes them.
you know, so they might be the most real person, but you no longer hear them. And then you have the person that you're like, look, I can just speak up because no one can still hear you. So what are your thoughts around a team, creating this keep it real philosophy, but having a team with multiple personalities?
I think it's just to your point, there are some people that need to be, we all know either we're that person or we know the people that always need to be dialed back on. They're like, I'm just keeping it real. Like, yes, what you're saying is factual, true. Wow, you really got your foot on the gas. Here's the thing, and it happens so easy and it's so subtle. It was about a year ago, a principal gave me some feedback that I didn't appreciate. And I guess I bet you that unsolicited feedback is my #1 pet peeve. Hey. Like if you're so random person, you don't even know what I do, and then you give me all this feedback I ain't asked for. No other way to set me out worse than that. So there she goes. She said, and I think she knows it, but because keeping it real prevailed, she had to take a deep breath and say, well, it's probably not piss the counselor off on it, so anyway. She said, when you told a kid that you're gonna call his dad, I just think you should have did that. Call his mom. I was like, her mom said, call me when something happens before an issue becomes a problem, and that's what I did, so I don't know what else you want me to do other than that. She made me promise. I said, yeah, Jimmy, but I'm gonna tell you how you said it. You walked up to him, he was already around some staff, and he said, yeah, just so you know, I'm calling your mom, just so you know. And then she went on to say, you know, I've seen you when it's like a preferred student say this. We got this dilemma. Your mom asked me to call when things are, you know, not going well. And I don't necessarily want to do that. But I made a promise to her, and you understand, like, you know, your mom, she's a tough lady, am I right? She's gonna be on her bad side either. So I just want to let you know that this thing happens, and if she find out and I ain't tell her, we're both gonna be in trouble. So, is that cool? I just want to throw it out there. I really gotta make this phone call. And they're like, yeah, I get it. So she was able to say, it wasn't what you said, it was how you said it. Like kids that's been getting on your nerves, you was like, yeah. Got on the phone right now. And I walked away, the kid escalates more, and I left. And I'm like, yeah, don't worry, mom said she's on her way. These kind of things happen. For somebody to keep it real is for that principal, knowing that unsolicited advice is my pet peeve, knowing but believing what she saw was true, because she saw me in a variety of situations, having the courage to come and do it. At first, I was just like, what she know? She ain't no counselor anyway. And then the next time I felt it, same situation, similar, presented itself, and I was like, when you get calm, I like to have a conversation with you. I'm like, I know you gotta call my mom. Like, I do. And then I just kind of let it slide a little bit like that, instead of like escalating more. So it's very difficult. It's something to be mindful about. Sometimes it takes feedback from a colleague to do, but it's worth wrestling with all the time because we're in a position of power with people with a lot less power, you know, homeless youth. Any other reactions to that?
Yeah, I have a reaction. Prior to working in corrections, and I've always been to keep it real. I've raised by a father that always kept it real, even my mom kept it real. Sometimes it was hard, you know, because they were my parents and they were like, it is what it is, this is it. You know, I'm a very successful person because they kept it real with me. But one thing I had to learn, especially going into corrections and having that real control as a JCO, it was, you know, even when you didn't want to be in control, you were, because, you know, blackboard everywhere. One thing I learned was, and I can't refrain from keeping it real, it's just a part of me, I like it, it's a good thing, it helps. But one thing I did learn, in order to keep really, really positive relationships with people, because keeping it real hurts, is to always check in on afterwards. There's not one youth in the house that I haven't kept it real with. I always go to them on my time. I don't have to go around nobody else because I'm that person that doesn't have a problem approaching. So I think the balance is really, really important. I might be that person every now and again that somebody be like, man, you should. But I'm the one they're looking for when they leave. I'm the one that they'll see in the streets and they'll be like, man, Michelle, I'm so glad that, you was that person, you let me have it when I needed it, then you came to me and you told me why. So I think keeping it real is a beautiful thing as long as you're able to continue to build positive relationships, because keeping it real does hurt. So you gotta have balance. Or people won't like you.
I just want to wrap up this slide before we move to the next one. So this one, you see the thing, it says integrated experience. It really says the behavior of one person affects the behavior of another. And I would add to that, if you let it and don't planfully think about it. When they come in, anxiety, defensive, and they act out, even in attention reduction, all this stuff got an impact on us. And unless we having meetings like this or trainings like this, it's easy to get sucked in because human nature, one person's behavior influences another. You ever seen somebody come in a room and they just everybody just bring down the energy in the room because that's their behavior impact. So I just want to point that out before we move on. So it's important to prescribe our responses for that reason. So we can have some ethical and transparent and do some really good work with homeless youth. So now we're moving into a little more of the nitty gritty of the presentation where they start talking about nonverbal. A lot of you guys know this. I'm sure everybody got at least parts of this in their bag of tricks. So think about this as a review and a discussion area. So they talking about proxemics, the personal space around an area surrounding the body that is considered an extension of self. And then they talk about giving people personal space 1 foot away, 1 or 3 feet. I noticed that there are times when I'm upset, I gotta kind of think about that a little bit to mind my own personal space. And the reason they bring this up here is because when things start to get heated, for example, when they start talking about being alone with that person that's acting out, those are opportunities where you can start to say, let me just move a little bit away from this person. And because the closer you are, the more things get more riled up. In theory, the farther you away, the less likely they are. They still may, but one thing you could do is just give personal space. The next one is understanding factors that may affect the amount of personal space. For example, there are some girls who have really bad experiences with men. And it's been some times where I asked a student to come in my office, then I shut the door, and they're like, what are you shutting the door for? And then I think to myself, I am this guy they met, this overly nice guy, in the past, that means that the guy wanted something. And for me to come in and close the door behind me kind of gave them some triggers. So that's one of the considerations. Culture, some people, have you ever noticed some people are okay with talking to each other like this? Some people are just their bubble is a lot bigger. So those are some things they point out to kind of consider when you're working with homeless youth, or generally speaking, anybody who went through a degree of trauma, because you never know what they went through. And it could be boys or girls, as you guys already know.
Can I add a question too? And I'm gonna pick on Miss C a little bit though.
That's fine.
But so the way that she deals with you may not. I'm just using me for example. But she was loud, and we go back to, or even her mannerisms and the way when you talk about how she deals with you, but it's effective. Me, probably just may not be from a different background, culture, because we all have different personalities. we sometimes say, I don't think she should be dealing with the youth like that. I don't think she should be that close. And I would go try to do the same thing she do, and I probably get punched in the face because, you get what I'm saying? So I might be able to get up in your face, with the youth, but you may not be able to do that because there might be an understanding of differences of, and let's be real, culture, and that can be kind of tricky. And I don't know if you have any suggestions on how we should probably understand one another and how we deal with youth in regards to, we all have makeups of different personalities and how we deal with our youth. And I might have a better rapport with certain males or, whatever, just like you might be able to close the door with people that might have triggers. Bryce may not be able to do that. And so just because you do it doesn't give Bryce the, well, oh, Jimmy did it, I can do the same thing, and I'm probably just answering, I'm just making a statement, just to get that out there.
When you bring up a variety of important topics, Doc Rivers, the coach for Celtics, said, when we're winning, the Clippers now, it's the Celtics.
Yes.
And then when he made the statement, he said, when we're winning, they call us veteran and experienced. When we're losing, they call us old. And it's the same thing here. When your approach is on point and you're turning kids around, you're like, man, that guy comes with some experience. As soon as you do something to trigger somebody because they perceive you too soft, they're like, see, you too soft. And it's the same thing with you. You're hard and it works, they're like, man, she is on point. When somebody blow up as a result, they're like, I told you she's too brash. That's what the thing is. She is way too brash. So it's an interplay of personalities and the bag of tricks that people bring. And it's only wrong when they don't necessarily go right. Because people gotta kind of be strength-based, kind of work out of their strengths. And we're all seems like we're at an age where we kind of know each other and ain't just amenable to change and kind of got our trajectory. Like I know that I get soft, but I know that at the same time it gets in my way. So it ain't my strength to be hard, but it's something that I work on. So it's something to always be mindful of. And just for the mere fact that we brought it up and talking about it, something just kind of like a walk away could be to ask the question, what are my strengths and how do my strengths sometimes turn into my vulnerabilities?
I think it's also really important thing is to kind of remember that we are a team and we might have one loud, brash, outspoken, in your face person. And we also have an understanding that we have some youth who need that. And we also have an understanding that on our staff we have the quieter, more timid, slow approach people. We have youth that need that too. So as a team, if someone knows something about you, it's okay, this youth needs this approach. Can you do that for me to get this hook in so that I can talk to them? We can do that. We need to know our own strengths and play off each other's.
Absolutely.
Because me, she would be like, good cop, bad cop now. She would be doing her thing, and I'd be like, see, what you need to take from this. She like, no, do it again. But if you want
They
to
respect it though.
if you
Like I said about my realness, y'all might see that, but y'all don't see my personal interactions with my youth. But I wake my babies up in the morning, and I'm that mom, I'm that love, I'm that, when they move out, they're hugging me and they don't want to let go, but they know that if they do something that they know, we've already had conversations. Yeah, I have such in-depth conversations with my youth that they know if they didn't know what they should do. And a lot of times when they do something wrong, they look to see if I'm there first.
see, you don't do this, if it works, I'm like,
I think there's a piece about this though too of being okay with difference. And I think that there are times that we often say to ourselves, you should do it this way, as opposed to saying that's my relationship with that youth.
Yes.
And I think that for me is the key of what I heard where you were with it, is that if we were all the same with the youth would our relationship with each of us different. And the reason we have it multiple staff is to have multiple relationships. So I think whether that youth is felt too harsh, the likelihood that youth could take what you say, my philosophy is always this: when that youth leaves us, they have to deal with the world that has multiple personalities. And if we try to be the same, that youth doesn't learn that people are different. And it's just real. So one is never really as staff, and this is, I'm piggybacking what Janice said, is never in front of the youth saying to that youth, when you could have done this differently. Get that in your mind, it's my relationship moving forward. But two is also realizing that you and I should have different relationships. I'm gonna talk to them the way I do, because that's why I'm genuine. That's how you really feel. Am I being my genuine self? And my genuine self is not quiet, and I think when you say timid, because I don't see quiet as timid. Quiet is powerful. This is different. And in our world, we give more, I'm gonna say credence or more importance to the person who's extrovert. That's not always power, right? You just hear them more. So for me, what I value in all of the different personalities in this room is that each of you have a very different approach to youth. And when they leave, they really will ask for each of you depending on what they need. That's our life, that's the world we live in. So I think to your point, it's more about appreciating our difference even amongst ourselves and saying, okay, her way may have felt harsh and my way may be soft, but there's a time that my approach is better and a time yours is better. And they both work. It's not about one or the other or that one is better than the other. And that's where I think we have conflict sometimes amongst ourselves. It's still comparison around what's better. And when we raise our kids and we think about our children, mom and dad or mom and mom or dad and dad are two different personalities. They both work. The kid takes you to talk to when they need it. Usually it's the person they don't want, but right? They pick who they need and what they need. And that's kids' brilliance as well.
And just adding to like point two, I think that gender plays a role in it. In my experience, I just want to bring it up because when I see this, I think about it. For some boys, they never had a dad in their life, and they're super happy, and we get a chance to get along really easy for their reason. For other boys, they never had a male in a position of power telling them what to do, and for their reason, they're like, "What do you can't tell me what to do. Who are you?" And they're like playing some kind of unresolved stuff out on me for the exact same reason. It's the same thing with mom. Sometimes when kids grow with a mom that they say, "Man, she really let her boyfriend run over her, and I don't know if I like that." And then they kind of partner up with somebody else that they perceive as stronger, whether it's a man or a woman. So these things come with a mixed bag, and we just don't really know this about individual people. And that really kind of plays a part to how they connect or don't connect. But building relationships over a period of time is almost always like the best practices. The third point is invading an individual's personal space, and which I mentioned earlier, which will increase the anxiety, especially if you don't have a relationship with that person. So these are just some pointers that you guys probably already do. That's just a nice reminder of, especially when somebody's starting to go there, which is what we're talking about.
Can I ask something since we got so many smart people in the room? You talking about like personal space, right? And I don't see my own personal story. Like I'm very aware of my personal space around people, but that's being like a young man of color. You kind of have to be aware of how, when one across the street, I see this old lady, like, okay, let me try not to look as threatening as possible. So she don't, because I just see the subtle person or just, then they just randomly gotta walk across the street. And I noticed like young people are very aware of just kind of who their space and kind of how intimidating they can be to people, so they kind of tread lightly. How would you, with everything that's going on in the world, how would you shape that, to your young men at your work? I mean, to yes, be aware, but also be in fear and how to somehow empower them with having that skill set to kind of be very aware of how people react to your body.
I like the way you just said, because the topic is the personal space and proximity for you guys to students. So then you would then model it to them, and then the follow-up will be to say, hey, here's what I'm doing intentionally, just so you know this is how it's helping me. So it'll probably be the exact same message you said, and the big chunk of it would be modeling it most of the time. They can then recall a time when it was escalated, and you said, I'm just going to give you some space because it seemed like you need it. Okay, so I'm gonna list these three, and in this area they're talking about kinesis or your body language. This is not verbal at all. It's face expressions, gestures, postures, movements. I think that this is really difficult and it takes a lot of work because it seems like something that everybody can do, but my guess is that it's easier to do with somebody who ain't irritating you at the moment or like a bird student or something. It's more difficult to do with not only a client here, but just anybody. When I think about this, my theory is that sometimes when you think about body language, I think eyes, I don't think anybody really roll their eyes intentionally. I think they almost roll by themselves. Have you ever been in a situation where you get to coach yourself like, don't roll your eyes? Then next thing you know, it is a lot of work, and I don't want to gloss over the facial expression and the gestures. There's been some times where I've been upset and I've been trying to call a counselor to help, so they want me to show up and be helpful. So the last thing I want to do is make a bad situation worse, right? So I'm never like about this guy. I'm like, hey man, I don't want to do. Then I got to do this in my body. Like, look, all you need to do, give this guy some space. Let me just tell his story. Let me just tell you what happened. It's just a fight, physical fight. Not even, you're like, see, there he goes again. And everybody's looking at me, I'm like, I was just listening. I'm trying to listen. The teacher kicked me out for no reason. Because I'm black, and I look at the class, all black kids. And I wanted just to get up and demonstrate that because that is the fight that we gotta fight when we're listening to somebody who's going there. Everything they're saying a lot of stuff that ain't rational. And then we're trying not to trigger them, but it's so easy to get into that. They stay, it's easier for sometimes when you're on point, and some days you're like, man, there he goes again. There he goes again. Third time in an hour, like this kind of thing. Kinesis is just being mindful of how your face expressions, gestures, and body posture and movements affect. You saw me demonstrate it. You guys personally know how hard that can be at times, and it's something that I wrestle with. It ain't like I'm a trainer of this. It ain't like I read it, I trained it, and now I do it. It's something that I think about a lot, especially when I feel triggered by anybody, generally speaking. The second one is discuss nonverbal signs of anxiety that participants have observed in their individual care. And this is just a situation where everybody's coming together to really keep these things on number one on their frontal lobe and to ask ourselves, are we minding our P's and Q's as we deliver service? Third one, a staff member kinetic behavior can serve to escalate or de-escalate the situation. Now, in this instance, my thought is this. You guys, let's say 4 of you guys call it like, okay, we got this counselor, he's supposed to be good. Let's call him to see if he can handle this. Then I come in and then I just skyrocket this guy. Not even anything I said is all about me doing this. It's all about me rolling my eyes. And then he's like, this dude ain't even listening. Why y'all even talking? It's just pissing me off worse. Then he blows up, get kicked out. And when you guys walk away, you wonder, like, why did I call him again? Did he really set this kid off? And this is a subtle thing to do, but it's super difficult to do. I just want to say that. It ain't nothing that you just start doing when you walk out of this training, like, now I got it. Any reactions to this before we
I want to say Pastor does a good job of that, because sometimes people be talking and I'll be over in the background. And I know he did it too, but he be like, okay, okay, and then he's smiling, it's offensive, and he'll be like, okay, all right, yeah. All right, this is good. So you know the rules, like he's like, and I'll be over in the background like, do what you gonna do already, pick him up, but I admire that he's able to smile and keep his facial expressions, saying like, why you doing BS to me? It don't say that. Me, I can't do that, so I have to do it. He's like, Like, it really be like, they're like, because if they see my eye, they know I'm thinking that they're yes, and so when we.
Yeah,
Computer
that's a good
screen,
strategy.
but he does it.
And
Mimic it.
if I had to guess, if I had to guess, you draw strength from that, right? And then you're able to pull and reflect on that when you're in that tough situation by yourself and say, Pastor was here, I seen him do it, and like try harder, right? I think that's the beauty of even thinking about this kind of stuff. You see somebody do it, you're like, I don't know if I can do that. But then when you get in a similar situation, you can at least give you a little bit of energy to say, this can be done. You know, I can just, there's nothing I need to say. Like you said with the phone, I do it all the time. You know, there's been some times where kids been kicked out of class and they're going off. It was probably a year ago, I was on my computer, they're going off, they're gonna slap me, they're gonna beat up everybody, and I wasn't doing anything. Another kid came by and he said, you know, I just wanna let you know that you could say this stuff all day. You're gonna be in here all day. Mr. Higgs just gonna be looking at this, you know, see videos all day. They don't care about nothing you're saying. And I was like, hey, get out of here. He was like, I know, Mr. Higgs. I just want to let him know, like, you know. And then he left, but that point wasn't missed. About an hour, this kid is bored. He's like, so can we talk about going back to class or what I need to do? And that was a situation where I just used silence. I know that, like you were saying, if you start to talk about how everybody did wrong and he's in here and everybody's always effing with him for no reason, it's just going to turn into a situation. And I'm at a place where I wasn't there. So I decided to just kind of redirect. So if you can't do it, you can just kind of redirect. Sometimes I look down at my feet. Sometimes I just kind of look away like that because I don't want to get goaded into it and make a bad situation worse. We talked about this, so I'm just going to list them all. This is what they teach for the staff where I work. And so we don't necessarily have to do this, but what I will say, it's about giving people space. For example, you don't want to be close enough where if they decided they can reach out and touch you, or you're close enough where you can reach out and touch them. Once you create a distance away, somebody got to do something more planful, like walk towards you a little bit. You got to walk towards them or they got to walk towards you. Not standing directly in front of them. So, for example, if I was where you are and you and I was having a situation, I noticed that you're by the door. And if me leaving ain't an issue at all, you would be just positioned a little bit off just to say that if you got up and left, you ain't gotta like deal with me. And that's something to think about. And the last one is just communicates a little bit more safety. It's the difference between, you know, let me use you for example, me standing over like this when you're escalating, and me just kind of like standing like this when you're escalating. Just let you know, if you want to storm out, you can. I ain't doing anything. I'm non-threatening. I'm just here to help. You really just don't get there when somebody's like this. Even if they're saying everything they're supposed to do. It's a little too close, and it's a little too much of a power position. And it don't communicate safety or respect. And if she wants to just get up and kick, she can kick me if she wants to. Otherwise, I can just be out of her way and just communicate that. So this diagram says that it's a little lame, but I just want to point out what the point they're trying to make.
But it does make a big difference, you know, because that young person feels then like it doesn't feel threatening to them. Mm-hmm. And so oftentimes just going from this to this kind of helps them de-escalate themselves. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've seen it play out live in some really tense situations. Mm-hmm. When I worked at a high school previously, so it makes a difference.
I've heard so many students say to me, or I've seen students, teachers just stand like about right there, like what I was doing here, and say, you need to get up and leave right now. And they're like, you need to give me some space.
Right.
And then they stand out right there. By the time I walk in, they're like, see where my finger is in relationship? She can they're like, hey, get your finger out of my face. I'll leave, but I ain't gonna leave because you're standing over, you know.
Right.
And so it's two issues now.
Yeah.
I can't just call a parent and say, kid did X, Y, and Z, as a result they had to leave. I just want to let you know. The kid's gonna say, yeah, mom, he was standing over me, stuck her finger in my face. The counselor was like, come on, and she was still talking. and this is a behavior school, and I'm a behavior kid. Don't they supposed to know better? Oh, here we go. Now I gotta put out somebody else's fire.
Yeah.
That's how it happens.
Yeah.
And I, like I said, when it's easy to get drawn into that, very easy. So, and it takes some practice and some mindfulness to not do it. Okay, so now we're talking about paraverbal communication. And you guys touched on this already. And I'll just list them all up here. When they talk about tone, that's the inflections of sarcasm and condescending. And in my head, when I think about this, I ask myself if I'm really just trying not to get them golden or whatever. I say, okay, if this person's parent was standing next to me and my boss, how would I then respond? Or a group of people standing by and seeing how a counselor responds to a student with behavior issues, how would I do it? And so it's really the difference, like the example when I was talking about the principal. It's not about what you say, it's about how you say it.
Right.
The one where she said I goaded him. I was just like, hey, I was upset, and I was like, well, I don't care what you do, how you react to what I'm saying. I'm gonna let you know and let the chips fall wherever they may. Is my disposition when I'm talking to them. If at my best, I'm thinking about kind of taking my time with that, monitoring my volume, which is how high I talk, and monitoring my cadence, which is how fast I talk. Because it's the integrated experience. When people start talking louder and they start talking faster, if you don't watch it, it goes you to talk louder and faster. Especially if they're bringing an issue to you that you don't have, that's just their issue. Let me ask you this question. Why are you always coming and effing with me? I mean, don't you got something else to do? And now you're in here effing with me. I know you got some other stuff. I know you shake your head, yeah. Yeah, that's all you know how to say. Yeah. Anything else, can you? I know it's supposed to be smart. It's just so inviting.
Yeah.
When he responded to me, it's kind of like what the lady was saying. Say, and he gives his response, and he still gives the consequence. And if that student or that person had to retell a story, they'll say, "What you say?" And they'll say, like, "How do you respond?" And say, "Well, he didn't say much. He just say, hey, I heard it. But he ain't really say it." That's it. I'm like, that's it? Yeah, that's it. As opposed to having some conversation about a back and forth.
Right.
Can I ask something? I have not always did this. I'll tell you just a recent incident where I talked to a youth, and we've been through a lot with this youth. And I thought they needed that more in the face type of thing. And I said, they said some crazy plan. It was really a crazy plan. And I think Chandler and Rome and they were there and on the side of them. And everybody's writing down notes, they're calm. And I'm looking at it, that plan sounds crazy. And he looks at me like, what? And I'm like, I ain't never heard anything like that. You mean you gonna tell me you're gonna do this, and that? That's crazy. I'm not gonna let you walk out this door. And, I just went through this whole thing, just feeling like you just told us something. You just got all this power to go do this crazy plan, right? And so, but then I knew I used the word crazy, and my energy was not where it would cause him to go to feel still supportive. So I had to go back and I said, you know what? I am sorry. I called, like really right there. I said, I'm sorry I called you. You think I called you crazy? I'm not calling you crazy. I apologize. And I think, so my question is to you, if we go beyond this part, our tone and our volume, and kind of we go and step across that line, is there a way to get the youth back supportive if we say, like if I apologize and try to get them back, or did we just lost them there and we just have to?
Well, it sounds like winning to me when I brought up the example and you piggybacked off it and you said, how can we teach this? And I said, well, you're modeling it first and then you're teaching it. And what I heard from you is, A, you're known to be consistent. B, what you said is an outlier to what you ordinarily say to anybody. C, you got a well-developed relationship with a person. Then they said something that was just straight up crazy. And you addressed it and kept it real, so now they know you're a human being, because they think to themselves, this dude ain't never really saying anything like this, and now he is. And then to cap it off, you went back and with humility apologized and then demonstrated that for them, like this is what adults do when they make mistakes, they apologize. So I see it as a teachable moment when in the by and large, you're consistent and you're doing what you're supposed to do. And I would say, just like I started, we're all human beings here. Everybody have a bad day or a moment sometimes. I mean, I know I do. A lot of times, gotta go and issue an apology where I was clearly wrong, and I just need to say it and own it like an adult. And it's almost always a teaching moment. If that ain't what I do, like blowing up or talking reckless to people, if that ain't what I ordinarily do, I think I feel more connected with people after I do that than I did even before an incident like that. Because then they see the humanity in it. Anything else on these three things?
I'm gonna react to what you're saying. Maybe the word crazy wasn't the best word, but you apologize for that. But I don't think, I would be concerned if you took away from that, I shouldn't challenge students who have crazy ideas, because he did. He was off. There's no way he was gonna do that. And somebody needed to at least be able to say, I don't think that's gonna work. And we're here for you, because you didn't finish what you said. You also said, you said, I'm sorry, and that's not what I meant. And I apologize for saying that. But I'm concerned about you, and I want to help you figure out how you can be successful in finishing school. So yes, it was a very teachable moment, because it was not only I apologize, but I'm showing you that this is what adults do, but I'm also saying that came out of a place of concern. I'm concerned for you. I'm concerned what's going to happen if you leave here and you're not able to finish school, you're not able to be safe. So I wouldn't want you to say, boy, last time I did this, it didn't work out so well, because you came from a place of I'm concerned. And we were all, after it was done, we were all like, this plan's nuts. It's not gonna work. There's no way that kid is gonna get a bus, get 5 different buses at what, 3 in the morning to get to school?
But you know why I would say that? Because of the series of events that happen afterwards.
Yeah,
It's always a landmark to be more careful, because I don't want to be live with life with regrets and guilt that I said something. So I have my own invisible baggage, I would say, that I'm dealing with, and I just want to make sure I always check myself by saying maybe I could,
maybe you could have used a different word than crazy.
Yeah.
But you clearly spent a good amount of time letting him know the reason for your reaction and the reason for your response. And it wasn't just to say you're crazy. It was to say I'm concerned about you and your safety.
I just come across some research recently that's talking about tone and how most arguments are caused overtone. Kind of what's being said, what the point is, and all that. So I just want to put that out there. That's really,
It makes a lot of sense,
especially in our society, we do a much better job with that tone.
Because it really takes away what you're saying. If you're saying something, if the sentence you're delivering is just a legitimate one, and then the way you delivered it, people tune you out very quickly. Once they start to see that condensation or you being condescending, inattentive, or just like I said, eye roll, all that stuff, people start to tune you out a little bit, or they don't take you as serious as they would have. Anything else?
I have a question. When you say you have a youth who has not done anything physical, but there are things that he does that, to me, just from being at this job solely, makes me believe if the right situation presents itself, he would be out there. So you do say sky, blue says orange. And then you say no, he say, I know. And it's like, sometimes he looks to start an argument. Like, even the simplest thing, or you be trying to give him advice, like, you don't want to leave it like this, because if you leave it like that, it's gonna happen. How you gonna tell me I didn't make it to 18 years being stupid, like, you're only 18, but okay, so with him, sometimes I feel like he didn't have, now I feel like maybe he didn't have a mother that was present or female, so sometimes he comes for the females. Like, that sometimes he get a little testy, and I'm like, hey, you doing that, because he wants to see if we're going to come back at him and show him the love. And yesterday when we had the tour, he was like talking about leave routing, knowing that these are visitors. But sometimes he blows up to the point where he has to walk away, he gets upset, he gets mad, it can be over the simplest thing. Like, it's not even over bad behavior, it can be over because, he said he was going to take his baby. So I said, well, do you have custody of that baby? Which it is, my baby. That probably lead you to some legal things. He got so upset, so mad, and he walked out, and he does this to me at least twice a week. And I don't want to further offend him with my realness, but I don't want to let him be, be that aggressive. How can we bring him back down to a point of how can we de-escalate him? Because his whole reason for escalation to me is there. Like, you getting mad because I told you don't need the child support papers away.
After coming and asking a question about it.
Yeah, like, if you were answering $1,000, he loses it. How can we bring him back down to where he can hear us?
Well,
When I offend him and not make him more mad, he gets mad. I don't know y'all, but I'm waiting for it to go up because he gets mad over the simplest things already. Like, okay, I was really not even mad about it. Okay.
couple of things. I mean, A, it's about the perspective you have and what kind of outcomes you want to